Okay, we're going to go through a workflow of the Acteon 5.0 software so we can get a better feel for how to manipulate the software and look at a cone beam CT, and also how to do a guide design. So here we have our patient Jill, a couple PAs from the screening for 2 teeth that were bothering her, and the cone beam. So what we're going to do is just double click on the cone beam file. It always shows as this axial slice. So as that downloads, it'll load our 5.0 imaging software. First screen we're going to see is just a very simple 4-panel screen with the axial, sagittal, and coronal slices. During my screenings, I'll typically stay right here and scroll down on the sagittal slice to look at the axial slice. I find that pathology and bone width is most easily appreciated in the axial slice. So you can hold with your left mouse button and just drag around is one way. Alternatively, you can come over here and make this full screen and just grab the slider. So if we're starting at the bottom of the jaw and coming up, you can see obviously the signs of the nerves, see the mentals, and in her case we'll see a pretty massive infection on number 19. And as we go up through the maxilla, we'll also see some internal resorption on 10 and the associated periapical radiolucency. Also gives you a good idea of the width of both jaw bones and when the sinuses come into play. So I use this as just a really quick screening because the axial slices are going to be best for pathology detection. So typically things should be relatively symmetrical. So as we're going up and we see this, that should kind of stick out to you. And then on the bottom, same thing as we're going down, you can see clearly some foreign body here and that kind of stuff. So that's all we're doing during the screening, just to look and see, hey, like, is there a spot over here for number 30? What I'll do is I'll move my mouse here and drag this so that it's along, like parallel to the ridge. And then I can pretty quickly discern, based on the coronal and sagittal slices, and you can scroll with your mouse wheel here, how much do we have enough space mesodistally? How's the ridge look, in a third dimension? We can even come up here and use the ruler, grab some distance, and just see, what we're working with. So in a quick screening, that's what I'll use. When we get into more specifics, we'll move on to these next couple tabs. So go ahead and make sure we're at the axial slice that we can see the jaw we want, in this case the mandible, and we're going to go to CPR settings. So we're going to be drawing our own panoramic curve here. So once again, we'll select mandible since that's what we're working on. If we're a little off angle or the patient was malpositioned, we can correct on either of these views, if they were left or right. What I like to do, I can grab with the third mouse button, clicking the mouse button and drag this around, is I want to see kind of an even spread, and I want to see some of the root apices so that I can draw a pano curve that relatively tracks the teeth. So now that we've selected the mandible and we like the angles here, we're just going to start by clicking in the back, one of the back corners, and we're picking points that are going to be our pano curve. So typically we're bisecting the teeth. If I see the nerve like I see here, I will try to make a spot there, and then coming back the jawbone like this. So now you can see our pano has started, our sliced pano. If you want to see a more traditional style pano, you can come here to the thickness tab. Usually 10 millimeters is pretty good. Kind of gives you more of a typical view. So if we like this pano curve, we're going to hit next. Because we chose mandible, it's going to ask for us to draw the nerve. So using the mouse wheel on the pano curve, we're expanding and contracting that pano curve to look for the nerve. If we can't find it very well, we can come up here and you can see our blue line here that's tracking us, and we can use the coronal slice. So I can see the nerve here in the coronal slice a little bit better than I can in the pano. We don't have to start all the way back in the lingual foramen. We just need know where the nerve is based on the tooth we're going to be working on. So as I come forward, I can track it here, And then there, when I see the mental, I'll click this out in space in the cheek. Okay, we're going to move to the left nerve just for good practice. Sometimes in the pano you can see it very clearly, like in this case, in which case you can do the clicking right here on the pano. And then mouse wheel to move that. We can kind of see how it just dips underneath that abscess. And then I'll usually finish on the coronal slice so I can get that mental and pull that out. So we click next. At this stage, we're in the teeth setup stage. We can actually drop in a digital tooth, like a little wax up in the area we're working on. I typically skip that just because in a dentulous case like this, we can kind of use our mind's eye for that. But this will show us the tracking of the nerve through the jawbone and our pano curve. So if we want, we can slice kind of through, we can take a look, but I'll usually skip straight ahead to the implant planning at this point. So this is my ideal setup. There's several setups to choose from. If you come up to layout, we can have all these different views. I prefer to have my pano, the 3D, and a tangential cross and axial slice. So that's my choice, because what I'll do is I'll use the pano to kind of pick where I want to look, and then I'll have the 3 views of that area. Okay, so number 19 has already been extracted and degranulated and grafted. We're going to be looking at number 30 today. So here's our site for number 30. You can zoom in on the panel by holding the right mouse button. And what I want to do is kind of get it close to where I want the implant to go. I'm just bisecting these contacts here. Okay, and we're going to pick the tooth, number 30. So right now we have a 5.2/9 BioHorizons Tapered Pro. For this patient, the most ideal placement, we can zoom in on both of these screens, is probably going to have a little bit of buccal thread exposure like that. Okay. We could jump down to a 4.6/9 and try to cheat this way. Let's see what that looks like. And then we come back and look at the 3D. That might be doable. It's leaning a little bit lingual for an ideal access out the central fossa. So what I'll plan, and we can still adjust this by grabbing either the turns at the top, the coronal part of the implant, or the apical, so we can swing the apex or we can swing the top. We can also grab this one in the middle and bodily move it around. So what I want to do is kind of put it a little bit more restoratively driven here. And that's, for the most part, when we're planning implants, we want to first do restorative driven. Where does this implant need to be to make the tooth a screw retained access right through the central fossa? And then you can decide, okay, if this is the clinical situation, are we better off grafting at time of placement with an onlay graft? Are we better off grafting first, coming back? Or can we cheat a little bit on our restorative plan and have a place like this and it still work out? We could probably do either graft at time or cheat a little bit on this plan, because she does. This is a very typical situation of the posterior mandible with this sloped buccal ridge. So we'll put our implant right here. See, we're kind of mid mesiodistal between these two, and the nerve is very, very far away. So 4.6/9 here. That would be it if you're doing what we typically call brain guided. You just want to look at the plan, hey, where do I want to put this? And then you can reference this during the surgery. So you might say, hey, how far from the lingual line angle do I want to be my central of my osteotomy? 5.5. That way you're not accidentally drilling here, right? So little things like that during surgery, it's nice to have this already planned, whether you're doing it guided or not. If we're doing a guide, we already skipped a step, but if we were doing the guide, let's just go back